Hello and welcome to the Lens of Punishment presentation. This is for Game Design 1, and I'm looking at Dead Cells through the lens of punishment. Now, Dead Cells is a roguelite action platformer, and this means that the gameplay is mostly based on combat and finding items on the map that will help you get through the game. And yeah, it's also a Metroidvania, and it's very similar to a Metroidvania. So, what are the punishments in Dead Cells? What type of ways do you get punishment, or do you get punished for your actions? Now, in Dead Cells, one of the ways that the game punishes you is through a very prominent mechanic of permanent death. Well, it's sort of permanent death. Now, you do completely die and you can't go back to where you were in the progress unless you make it back from the beginning of the game. But some things stick. Now, another way that the game punishes you is that if you have, or the main thing that the game is punishing you for, it is punishing you for a poor understanding of the enemies and the combat and the game systems. Now, one of the ways it does that is that it has all the enemies have a very distinct tell as to when they're going to attack. They all have like either an exclamation point overhead or like a big wind up on their attacks. So not being able to dodge or block in time, you take pretty big damage. You can normally do maybe to like a third or a fourth of your health bar, even as you gain health as you go through the game. Now, after you kill enemies, you get gold and another currency called cells. And in between levels, you can spend these cells with a character called a collector. Now, doing this, you can permanently unlock blueprints or items that you found around the map, but you can only spend these money or cells after a certain level ends. So if you start hoarding cells and hoarding gold, you're going to get punished by the fact that the only place to spend them is after the level is over. So dying with lots of gold in your pocket, you're going to get punished by all of it being taken away. So why do they punish you like this? Well, a big reason is that it normally a game to totally complete Dead Cells, to find everything it has to offer, could take upwards of 60 hours, but a normal playthrough could take 30 to 60. I'd say 30 if you're on like the more skilled end of players, but still a normal playthrough of Dead Cells could take 30 to 60 hours. But if you had a checkpoint after every difficulty and after every boss, that means that the gameplay could be only 5 to 10. This is because like if you did this, you could just memorize the level and find the most efficient way to get through, and that's not the type of gameplay that Dead Cells is providing. No, the reason that you're punished for not knowing that all the enemy interactions or knowing where to go or knowing how to platform very well is because each time you die, all of the levels change. Now, this doesn't mean, if we look at our flowchart here, that's a very handy way to keep track of like how you progress through the levels of the game. This doesn't mean that the placement of the levels change or the difficulty does. All of the levels stay in the same area. The Promenade of the Condemned and the Toxic Sewers will always stay directly after the prisoner's quarters. But the content inside of the prisoner's quarters will change. The enemies will stay the same. All of the platforming challenges will stay relatively similar, but the placement, the timing, how hard they are, the groupings, all of this will be randomized within its own specific level. So you know what to expect when going into a certain place, but you don't know. There's still a level of uncertainty within each level, and every time you die, everything gets reset. And this causes the goal of resetting the player and resetting all the levels after you die is to force the player to learn through trial and error. Now, like I said earlier, you retain your unlocked weapons and you retain your unlocked skills, but you can only find them randomly throughout the map. So each time you die, The reason why they're punishing you like this is so that you can try out new combos, you can try out different ways of playing, you can try using all the things you find, so that through try and error you can actually learn how to interact with the game system in a way that you can like positively make progress through the game, not just like winning through like a lucky setup where there's no enemies and you can just run straight to the end. That the reason why they're punishing you is so that you can learn. Next, is this type of punishment fair? I'm gonna argue yes, it's completely fair. Now, as we know, it's the main punishment is taking lots of damage from enemy hits and dying if you don't know what you're doing or what you're up against or how to face it. Now, the reason that I think this is fair is because each time you play and make it to the collector or finish any level, every time you do that, you make positive progress towards your end goal. This means that your mechanics get your actual like controller in hand mechanics get better when you play the game. You understand the game systems better. You possibly unlock more weapons, more skills, more mutations. Also, you can, if you don't unlock it, you can definitely put your cells towards it to make progress towards unlocking weapons, and you just get a better understanding of the way that the levels are constructed and the enemies are placed. Initially it seems bad losing the weapons you have in your hand, the cells in your pocket, and the gold in your bag, but you realize that like the cells you have aren't, in the grand scheme of things, 20 cells, losing 20 cells because you died, losing 30 cells because you died on this level isn't a big hit, because you've just added 20 cells for each level that you collected beforehand. So the loss that you have each time you die is smaller than the progress that you make in the total overall gain from completing everything behind you. Now, so yes, in conclusion, I do think the punishment is very fair. The relationship between punishment and reward, can the reward for making this progress outweigh the punishment and the bad feeling of like losing your cells in your pocket and having to be sent back to the beginning? So the reward for, well, there's really a reward for losing actually, and the reward for dying is that you get a whole new set of levels, that you get a new opportunity to play, you get an opportunity to go through a different setup of the dungeon, of the areas, and you can have opportunity to encounter these new different places. And now there's a core like mechanic of the game that I haven't really mentioned so far. I've mentioned the combat and I've mentioned the items and like the platforming, but exploration is a huge aspect of the game because it randomizes each level. After you go through it, you're going into something with correct expectations of what's going to be there and like what type of enemies, what they can do, and how they can hurt you. But there's also like an aspect of mystery and like anticipation of how this is going to be set up and what's going to be there. There's also not only enemies and levels, but there's secret lore areas that you can find. Like for the one on the left. When you go into these areas, your timer is paused. So you're very much rewarded for finding these and going out and seeking them, because it doesn't affect your time, so your malice can't go up, and you get a better understanding of the lore through investigating these things. And they don't show up too often, but when they do, they're incredibly interesting and they're very worth the going out of the way. And that reward itself is great, but you can also find other like hidden nooks and crannies in the map which show up pretty randomly, but also very often. Finding caches of money, caches of cells, finding a new blueprint from like a new platforming challenge that shows up every time, and bringing these to the collector is ultimately how you keep your rewards. So you find all these like goodies, these lore chunks, these like caches of gold and cells and blueprint, and like once you have these, you have to be very, very tight with your combat. You have to be very precise with how the enemies move and careful if you want to keep them, because if you're not, you're going to get punished by not making it to the collector at the end of the level. Now, in conclusion, although dead cells may seem punishing after your first death, upon further playthrough and inspection, you realize that every time you die, you not only get better at the game by increasing your mechanical skill, but you also gain opportunities to push your playthrough to a better point, to give you new opportunities so you can push a better understanding of the game systems and the game enemies. Now, in this punishment, dying gives you more potential weapons, more skills, more understanding of the game systems, more lore, more runes. Completing the game by having a lucky run is almost impossible, but completing the game by having a playthrough in which you thoroughly understand the game systems, the best strategies, the best weapons, where you have the runes and you have the mutations, completing it like this is only possible through dying and getting punished for not knowing these things. Thank you.